There are interview tapes recorded inside California prisons between 1971 and 1996 that were never broadcast. Not because they were too violent, not because they were too disturbing, but because, according to internal memos from the California Department of Corrections, they reveal a level of psychological manipulation that may be harmful to the public. For decades, these tapes were locked away. Some were mislabeled, some deliberately erased, some quietly transferred to private archives. But a handful survived. This is the story of those recordings and what they reveal about Charles Manson's mind. Roll the tape. In 2019, shortly after Charles Manson's death, a former prison archivist, choosing to remain anonymous, contacted an investigative journalist with a strange offer. You want to understand Manson? Then don't look at what he said on TV. Look at what he said when cameras were off. What arrived weeks later was a small cardboard box. Inside, 6 reel-to-reel tapes, 2 cassette tapes, a torn folder marked "Interviews Restricted. Do not duplicate." Some tapes were pristine. Others, warped by heat. One had been spliced back together with yellowing tape. The folder contained interview transcripts, pages with missing paragraphs, blackout marks, and handwritten notes by prison staff. Experts confirmed the voices on the tapes were Manson's. For the first time, the public can hear what he said when he wasn't performing for a national audience. What follows is not speculation, not myth, not dramatization, that it's extracted from real interview material with only identifying details altered for ethical reasons. Recorded months after his conviction, this first tape reveals something unusual. Manson didn't speak like a man who believed he lost. He spoke like a man who believed he won. The interviewer asks why the family followed him. Manson answers instantly, "I didn't lead them, I just reflected them." He claims he used what he called mirror psychology, repeating back what people wanted to hear until they mistook him for their own thoughts. In a calm, almost bored tone, Manson describes his method. If you stare long enough into someone, you'll see the part of themselves they're trying to hide. Then you feed that part, you make it grow. The interviewer presses him, "Did you believe you were controlling them?" Manson laughs quietly. "Everyone controls everyone, that I just did what your society does. But better." It's the first documented moment where Manson openly suggests his power wasn't mystical, wasn't spiritual. It was psychological, cold, deliberate, learned. This tape was labeled simply, "Psych, do not air." In it, Manson explains what he calls his 3 rules for breaking a mind. Rule 1, remove the world. You gotta cut a person away from everything that ever told them who they are. Family, school, work, names, all of it. He claims that once someone loses their external identity, they'll cling to whatever replaces it. Rule 2, flood them with meaning. People don't need truth. They need a story that makes their pain make sense. He describes helter-skelter not as prophecy, but as doctrine engineered to fill a void. Rule 3, break the self, then reward the shell. You hurt them, then you heal them, over and over. After a while, the part that says no gets tired. Psychologists who later reviewed the tape said the wording was disturbingly similar to techniques documented in modern cults. One psychiatrist wrote in the margins. He understood trauma bonding without ever using the term. This was one of the most fragmented tapes, much of it erased. But what remains is chilling. Manson speaks about himself in third person. Charlie Manson was a character, a costume, a cartoon for you people to look at. He says, Charlie didn't exist before people needed him. The interviewer asks, "So who are you really?" A long pause. Then, "Nobody important." But the way he says it is not humility, it's calculation, like someone closing a door. Experts later noted this is classic dissociative patterning used by manipulators. Build a persona, use it, abandon it when convenient. This tape is the only one recorded at night. It begins with the sound of guards talking, keys rattling, a prison hallway, then Manson's voice. "You want to know the part no one told you? Nights at the ranch were school." For the first time, Manson describes what happened after dark at Spawn Ranch. He talks about Sensory deprivation experiments, extended periods of silence, group staring sessions, simulated death exercises. Sleep disruption, ritual humiliation disguised as ego death, none of these were in the public trial. Manson says, "You break someone's sense of time, you break their sense of self. Pretty soon they'll believe anything you tell them." He insists it wasn't cruelty, it was training. "The world out there beats you until you fit. I beat you until you disappear." When asked if he enjoyed it, he responds, "Enjoyment's not the right word. Efficiency is." This is the first tape where his voice sounds almost proud. This interview lasted 22 minutes. Manson spoke only in the last two. The setup is bizarre. The interviewer asks questions, and Manson sits silently, breathing slowly, almost meditatively. Then, without being prompted, he leans forward and whispers, "Most people can't sit in silence. They panic, they run, they confess." He says silence was one of his tools. If you let someone fill the silence, they'll tell you everything you need to know to control them. He calls it the doorway in. This interview abruptly ends with the sound of a guard saying, "We're done." The tape clicks. This final recording is the most psychologically revealing. Manson's voice is older, rougher, but surprisingly coherent. The interviewer asks, "Do you feel responsible for the people you controlled?" Manson answers, "You're asking the wrong question. The question is, why were they so easy to control?" The interviewer presses, "Why were they?" Manson exhales, long and slow. "Because they were empty and nobody noticed." The interviewer asks if he ever felt guilt. A long silence. Then, "Guilt is for people who think their choices matter." The interviewer asks, "And you didn't?" Manson answers, "I was a product. You build a man from prisons, lies, and broken families. Don't act surprised when he breaks other people." Then comes the final statement, the reason this tape was never released. Manson leans toward the mic and speaks with cold clarity. "I didn't create monsters. I found them, lost, lonely, afraid, and I gave them a place to put all that feared in me." He finishes with, "You want to stop another Manson? Then stop making people who need one." The tape ends. For decades, these tapes were considered too dangerous to broadcast, not because they glorified Manson, but because they revealed something terrifying. Manson wasn't an anomaly, he was a blueprint. Psychologists who reviewed the recordings noted 5 consistent patterns. 1. Emotional starvation in recruits. Many family members came from abusive homes, absent parents, or emotional neglect. Manson didn't offer philosophy, he offered belonging. 2. Identity collapsed by stripping members of names, routines, time, and responsibilities. He removed their internal compass. 3. Trauma bonding. Cycles of punishment and reward strengthened loyalty even as members suffered. 4. Dissociative leadership. Manson's ability to switch personas allowed him to adapt to any follower's vulnerability. 5. The paradox of meaning. He gave meaningless chaos a narrative, helter-skelter, turning lost youth into soldiers of destiny. In the end, these tapes reveal something far more unsettling than cult rituals or unsolved crimes. They reveal the internal architecture of Charles Manson's mind. A mind not driven by ideology, not driven by prophecy, not driven by madness, but driven by a predatory understanding of human weakness. Manson was not a prophet, not a mastermind, not a supernatural manipulator. He was an expert in psychological vacancy. He found people who were empty and made himself the only thing that could fill them. His final words on the tape, spoken with a fading voice but absolute confidence, summarize everything. "People think I stole their minds. I didn't. I just stepped into the space where their minds used to be." This is the darkest secret of America's most horrifying cult. Manson didn't build followers, he inhabited them. And the most frightening part, psychologists agree, there will be others, not like him, but using the same blueprint.